Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Positive Posting Conversation. I'm Zazie Todd, and I'm joined, as always, by my host and colleague, Kristi Benson. Hi, Kristi.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And we've got a very exciting guest today because we're talking to Nicole Ettenhofer about involving pets in your wedding photos. So this is a really fantastic topic. And Nicole Ettenhofer is the VP of Growth and Strategy for George Street Photo and Video, which is a national US wedding photo and video company based in Chicago, Illinois. And she has experience serving thousands of customers and offering best in quality wedding coverage at an affordable cost. And George Street believes that pets are cherished members of the family, and including them in wedding celebrations adds an extra layer of joy and emotional connection on the big day. And of course, we agree very much with that. So Nicole also has over a decade of experience in the wedding industry, and she's an expert in wedding trends. So today she's going to share her tips for including pets in wedding photos, and I can't wait to hear them. But Nicole, I believe you have a personal story about your own pet as well that explains how you got involved in this.
Yes, I do. So I was married quite a few years ago, and it was very important to me. My 100-pound Rottweiler, Estelle was her name. I had her as I was single, and she was a huge part of my life. And she was also terrified of cameras. And so, it was a must-have to have her as part of the wedding, but I had to be really strategic on what I was going to do, which is why I love sharing the stories and the tips to really help people because there are so many ways to include your pet without having to have them be there, or if they could be part of it in some way for you. And so with Estelle, so she was terrified of cameras, so I had to make a decision when I was going to have her be at the wedding. And so we had during the getting ready, we made sure that the cameras were, completely down during the times when she was around me. So we would constantly have her in and out. We were able to catch a glimpse of her from the video from afar, and it's one of my most cherished videos because it's the only one that I have of her in all of my time being with her. And I had her for over 7 years. So that is such a cherished moment. And then also during the dinner time, we made sure that Estelle made a guest appearance, and I asked our photographers and videographer and all of our guests, please put down your phones, please put down any cameras. And we had her come and do a little tour and visit. And then we announced when she was, off the property so that everyone could then, pull up their cameras once again. But it's really, being strategic, being creative, and what makes the most sense for you and your pet is really important when you're bringing them into your big day.
Yeah, that's such a lovely story, and that's so thoughtful to think of what she would need and how, what would be the best way to incorporate her in the wedding so that she could still be there and still feel safe. I think that's beautiful. Do you think there's an increasing trend for people to include pets in their weddings?
Absolutely. And, more and more, everyone would wants them to be part of it. They're part of the family, as I know we all agree. And so they're part of the family. And so they definitely want them to be part of their special day.
Before I jump in with my first question, I just wanted to say about your story that I love it that you advocated for your dog with your guests as well. I think as like a dog trainer, that just warms my heart that you were just very clear, like, I want everybody to put their phones down because this scares my dog. So that was beautiful.
Thank you,
Um,
Christy.
so when you're talking with people who want their pets to be involved with their wedding, and I understand you'd be doing this kind of conversation beforehand, what kind of preparation are you sort of recommending people do with their pets?
Well, first of all, asking the questions of, what is best for your pet? So, first and foremost. So, if they are very social beings and they are, good with many humans and crowds and they've been part of crowds, that's also the key too. Sometimes a pet may have been a part of a smaller group, but if you're going to have 100 people at your wedding, has your dog experienced that large of a group? So, so really thinking about, how does your dog interact with humans? How does your dog interact during stressful times? How does your dog interact in those moments? So really understanding their personality. And then also with the bride and groom or couple, bride and bridegroom and groom, making sure that everyone really thinks about too, what's best for them. So if you are, an individual where it's really important to you that you are that you have a complete control of everything, you may not want to include your dog because your dog may not follow those perfect instructions that you would like them to follow on that day, because it's such a nuanced day for them. It's, not the norm. It's out of their comfort zone. So also, being mindful of that. So that's first and foremost, just what makes sense for all involved.
Yeah, I like that. And that's a good point, that the pet doesn't really know what's happening. Everybody else is preparing for it a long time in advance, but the pet has no idea what's going on, and it's very different from their norm. So do you think it's a good idea to have a handler for the pet on the day? And what kinds of things would a handler do?
I would say that it's extremely important to have a handler. With a handler, it's you can have a friend, a family member, but you can also hire someone as well. And hiring someone might be the best opportunity for you, because that way you don't have to worry about your friend or your family not being able to be part of a specific time. And that handler should be fully dedicated to your pet. That's what their role is for the day. So that way you can make sure that the comfort of your pet is being considered every single moment. So if the dog is feeling comfortable, if it is time for a meal, time for a snack, maybe they just need a little break, the handler will be there to help support them during the day. Because as a couple, you do not necessarily want to have that be part of your day. So having someone dedicated is important. If you can't afford to have someone professional, or a friend of a friend of a family member, somebody who maybe wouldn't be at the wedding that day, that's another alternative as well. But making sure that your pet is tended to 100% of the time.
I've actually seen in some of our dog trainer groups, some of our colleagues, Zazie's and I's colleagues, saying, "Oh, I have a cherished client who I really adore, and they're getting married, and they want me to handle for their dog." And I just think, oh, it's such a wonderful thing, for our colleagues who really, because often we really like our clients, we really we hear a lot about their lives with their dogs, and you get attached. So to be able to be there as part of that celebration, and they're like, should I charge? Should I do this as a volunteer? So I think it's very cool. And also, like you mentioned, that a dog trainer would be a good option. Dog trainers are very good at handling dogs, keeping a cool head, so I'm like, this should be a service that we readily offer. So
That's
what kind of roles?
Kristi, I have to say.
Sorry, go
I'm sorry,
ahead.
that's a great idea, Kristi, to have that as a regular service.
Yeah. It's super fun for us. And dog training can be kind of a hard field. You're dealing with a lot of stress and stuff. So I love it when I see my colleagues getting the opportunity to do something so joyful and easy, probably. So what kind of roles can pets take in the wedding? Like, what do you recommend? What have you seen?
We've seen so many different options, and all are lovely. That we've seen them be ring bearers. We've seen them be, the maid of honor or the dog of honor. We've seen them, be the best dog or the best man. We have seen them, just as part of the processional of the wedding. We've also seen some alternatives too when the dog can't be there. And, those include engagement sessions. That's a great way to also test your pet in front of a camera. How does because having a camera phone versus cameras, plural, is very different for the dog. It's a very different moment. So having that be part of whether, you may have them at the wedding or not, having them part of that engagement session helps. And it's always fun for the save the date when they have, different signs that might say, my humans are getting married, save the date, or, dad asked, mom said yes. I mean, they have all these wonderful, cute signs that you can either have in front of the pet or on the pet as part of it. And it's really, really lovely. So engagement sessions. And then, like with Estelle, it was like really thinking about, is this right? How I make this right? If you can't find it appropriate, then also an alternative to that is, we've seen a lot of specialty drinks that are named after the dog. So they'll have like photos of the cats and the dogs, and and sort of they're all on display, and they'll have something named like, Fido's Martini, or, something fun. So really being able to integrate your pet that way And then another fun thing that we've seen is in lieu of any kind of party favors, they'll make a donation on behalf to a pet organization on behalf of the pets. And so there are a lot of really fun ways that you can bring your pet in, whether it's in real life or an alternative option as well that's more suitable.
There are some great ideas there. I love those. And actually, we were sent some amazing photos before this interview. So I've seen some absolutely gorgeous photos of pets at weddings, and it included some engagement photos too. So at George Street Photo, you're used to doing this lots of times, so you've got a lot of experience. What are your tips for getting pets to cooperate with the photographs?
Well, I think first thing to remember is that your pet may not behave in front of the camera. So, being okay with those candid shots that come organically, like you just spending time with your pet might be some of your absolute favorite photos of the day. So remembering that your pet might not, sit beautifully with the group of individuals. So kind of remembering that. And I'll go into some tips in just a moment, but just being okay because seeing your interactions with the pet and just the joy on your face, on your pet, your pet's face, just seeing all of the humans around the pet, some of those really do create the most. So just being okay with whatever happens, I think is, number one. And then secondly, though, high value treats. So, when you're doing training with your dog, what is that high value treat that they absolutely love? My dogs love these beef livers, and so that's what I give them. It's hydrated beef liver, and so anytime I have a moment, so kind of be thinking about that ahead of time. You may want to have something that maybe you only give your dog every once in a while. Also, test the treats ahead if you're giving them something new, because you don't want your pet to feel ill if there's something doesn't agree with them. So high value treats, number one, and then toys, number two. What are their favorite toys? If they like the squeaks, if they like the crinkles, or something else, whatever that might be. And that way, and this is where you would have your handler help. They would stand behind the photographer with that to try to get them to focus, toward the camera. But that doesn't always work. And remember, that's still going to be a great shot, right? Because everybody laughing at the pet. And then you have to be ready for anything when you involve your pets. We have seen some really wonderfully funny and adorable, and when I say funny, I mean that in the most lovely way, where the dog is so excited to see dad at the end of the aisle or mom at the end of the aisle, and so they go running toward them versus actually doing the walk that they practice over and over again the day before the day of. So, but they just get so excited and they just start, going as fast as they can toward their favorite human. And so, keeping that in mind as well.
I love that. I love the like aim for the goods, but be willing to just love what happens no matter what. Yeah.
It makes some of the greatest photos and the greatest memories.
Yeah, for sure. So working, as you are aware, and the fact that you mentioned high value treats, I think Zazie and I both wanted to do a little is that something that, as dog trainers, these are messages that we want like all dog guardians in all situations to be thinking about. So everyone knows that working with animals can be, a challenge sometimes. And so what should people do about those times when the pet is being unpredictable or is stealing the limelight? I think you've already kind of got into this, like maybe just accept it and get some great pictures that you'll love later. But do you have any other advice if there is a challenge?
Yeah, if there is a challenge, it might be that, your pet might need a little break too. So maybe, pick an alternate moment that day where you're going to get a group shot. Or if you really want a shot with the couple and the dog, even cat, just making sure that, maybe you do that shot not where you intended, but maybe there's an alternative place. So if you are, near your home, could you do that in your backyard? Could you find a space that is away from people? So that way they have a little bit more comfort versus, again, those large groups they're not used to on a daily basis. So making sure you can find an alternate spot or an alternate time. Like maybe the dog simply needs a rest for a good hour or two, takes a nap, is calmed down. I like to use licky pads. We always recommend those where it's where you have the pad and you can put some food on it, a little treat. And then, that sometimes will help to calm them down. So you might want to do that for a minute and then come back to try to take those photos. But really, Kristi, I highly recommend just going with the flow, because I see thousands of wedding photos a year, and so many people include couples, and the most joyful moments of the day sometimes are when your pet is not behaving. It's really lovely.
I love that. I think some of the unpredictability of pets is just what we love about them. So making that a part of the special day when it just happens, I think that's a really good idea. And also, I love how you're thinking about the comfort of the pet and what the pet is going to be comfortable and happy with. And I think that's so important. And of course, sometimes it's not really suitable for a pet to actually take part in the wedding. And you've already said a little bit about some of the other ways that pets can be involved. But I wondered if you could talk a bit more about that, because some pets might not be comfortable, but also you have some animals. And in some of the photos that we were sent, I saw some big animals. I saw some llamas, I believe. So some animals like that aren't necessarily going to be able to actually come to the wedding. So also thinking about ways of involving pets who maybe can't actually be at the wedding. What suggestions do you have there?
That's a great question. So what you can do is you could do the photos ahead of actually, going to any of the ceremonies or the reception, or in between those times. So maybe there's a time where you make a stop at home. And most photographers and videographers are willing to, travel to a couple locations throughout the day. So that's usually part of a natural wedding package. And so that allows for you to do maybe getting ready shots. Maybe there's a moment ahead of all of the activities where you meet with your pets, finding an alternate, location. If you're not able to be home, if you're traveling somewhere, are you staying at an Airbnb where you can go visit the Airbnb? Is there a park that they're comfortable with where you can bring them to the park? Outdoor photos with pets is really lovely. Again, you still want to have your handler. You still want to have someone who's there to help you. But having a local park where you can bring the pet to, that maybe that's where they go on their daily walk, their daily journey. They know the smells there. And so bringing them to that comfort level. If your pet is a horse, for example, we have many of those, or, then also too, just going to wherever your pet lives. So, and having photos that might be in front of that. I do want to warn, you have to kind of be mindful of your attire. So you're all dressed up. And so you may need to be okay with a paw print, a hoof print, some mud, like just kind of being mindful of all of those things and planning accordingly. Maybe if you are going to be in a muddy area, making sure that you can put down some cloth or even towels or a sheet around to kind of help protect the attire, your shoes, and so forth. And then also you might want to wipe the paws ahead, because they often get excited and want to jump on mom or dad. so just kind of be remembering that your pet's going to be your pet, even though it's your wedding day.
They won't necessarily understand the human gravity of a beautiful white dress or whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, if I may add too, it's like with couples, it's natural to feel a little anxious and excited on that day too. And if your pet is sensitive, they're going to feel that as well. So just kind of remembering that too, like to kind of take a moment to kind of be calm, because it's I remember how excited and nervous I was on my wedding day. It's like remembering to try to be as calm as you possibly can when you're approaching your pet, because they might sense you as well. So just again, going with that flow.
Great. And do you find many people working with a trainer? So thinking of the dogs, do you find that many clients work with a dog trainer in the run up to the wedding, or do they do much prep at all, or just go with it on the day?
Many of them do rehearsal. So, and usually with the rehearsal, the trainer is there. So it's usually just the day before, is what a majority of people do. But I do actually recommend that they, maybe have a like a small party, like bring the dog, bring the pet to the rehearsal, bring the pet to the rehearsal dinner. How does the pet behave? Have the handler leave, with your pet if that's the need. Having the dog trainer work with you. Maybe having your engagement party. Is your pet there? What even for a part of it? So that way they're around those larger groups. Because even when you have family parties and friends over, like they're not, really large parties like a wedding is or the rehearsal. So giving them a couple of opportunities to see how do they do, because really is the day going to be okay with them is really important. So recommend, different types of rehearsals. Many people get engaged, 18 months, a year ahead, 6 months ahead. So use that time if you're considering to bring your dog, like what, should I be bringing them out more to see how they are with people? Should I be bringing them to larger groups? And just really trying to see what works for them. Because again, there's no need to put them in a stressful situation.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I think I was thinking the same. I was thinking my mind was going down the same path I think that Zazie's was, and I was thinking I would like our listeners to know, if they're new to dog training, that a lot of the things that we're going to be asking for dogs to do in a wedding scenario, like sit for a while we back up and take a picture, aren't natural behaviors, and they're not naturally taught in a dog training class, and we don't usually do them in our lives. So often when we ask our dog to sit, we stay really close to them. It's actually not a big training task to teach a dog to sit and stay while we back up and take a picture of them, but it's a training task. So you need like a plan, you need some good treats, you need to set some time aside to do that. Like I've recently trained one of my dogs. I have this really cool tree in my yard that it grew to the side and then up. And I've been training my dog to jump up and pose quite majestically. And just the amount of training repetition it takes to get her first up there, and then up there with me taking 1 step back and then 2 steps back. And then now I can do 5 step back and take a picture. So if there's things in your mind, if you're planning what you want your dog to be doing for these wedding pictures, just as a heads up, you can train your dog to do it, but it will not be on the day of. On the day of, it will be all of these fantastic management techniques, Nicole, that you've been telling us about, like giving your dog a break, using a licky mat to calm them down, catching them in the moment, doing something cute, all of this, or having, most dogs will readily sit beside someone that they not always, sometimes they want to face you, but you can readily train this stuff, and it's not hard and it's very fun, but just something to consider. Not that you have 1,000 other things to do before your wedding, but this will be a fun one.
Yeah, I think so. So thank you very much for sharing all these fantastic tips for us. Is there anything else that you wanted to say about involving pets in wedding photos, Nicole, before we move on?
There is one other important part, and that is with your venue or locations where you're going to be doing any type of photography or any of the activities throughout the day, making sure that you truly understand what their pet policies are. Do they allow pets? Do they allow pets? Maybe they don't allow them indoors, but they allow them outdoors. So making sure that as part of all of your planning, if you are even considering your pet being part of anything, making sure you truly understand that and that you comply with that. Because again, you don't want the stress of that day where all of a sudden you are unaware that your dog is unable to come in and you had a whole game plan with that being part of the activity. So making sure that you understand that, asking those questions, and also with your photographers and videographers, many are comfortable with pets, but some are not. So making sure you ask that question as well, if even before you know for certain if you are bringing your pet or not. So asking those questions ahead with all of your venues and locations and talent members that are going to be part of the day.
Good point. So important to check. Well, thank you for sharing all of these wonderful tips with us. I think they've been so useful to help people get wonderful photos of their pet as part of their wedding or their engagement photos and so on. So we're just going to move on now to the book section where we each recommend a book. And Nicole, I believe you have a book to recommend to us.
I do. So my favorite book is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's, just that's a lovely book. But may I give a second book as well that's related to dogs?
You can, yes.
Great. So Inside a Dog by Alexandra Horowitz is also one of my favorites. I really learned so much about animals reading that book.
So Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer has been on my reading list for a long time. I have it on my bookshelves and I haven't read it yet, so I have to get to that. And as for Alexandra Horowitz's book, I think we all love that book. It's such a wonderful book. Yeah, absolutely. Great choices. Thank you. Kristi, what book are you going to recommend this time? You're on mute.
Darn it. I just finished reading Mark Beckhoff's The Emotional Lives of Animals while listening to it. I'm not sure if you'll be able to
Oh,
see. Yeah. And it's the updated edition. So it was I believe I've read the original version before, but it really goes into he has this sort of interesting way of presenting information where he tells a little parable or a story first, an anecdote. Someone emailed him. I guess he must get a ton of emails from people who are like, I saw an animal do XYZ, and you know what's going on here. And then he uses it to kind of jump into the science behind animal emotions. And really, the entire point of it is that sort of, you know, trying to convince people that animals have emotions. And it's sad to me that we're still at a point in 2024 where some people apparently still need convincing of that fact. But I mean, it's very cool to hear about the science and to hear about all these different animals that you wouldn't normally be expecting to hear about, insects. And he even makes a point that plants have sentience. And I've just finished that. I would recommend it. It is super interesting for sure.
Brilliant, thank you. And I thought I have to pick a rom-com, but it's not actually a rom-com, but it's kind of close. I picked Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, which is by Satoshi Yagisawa, and it's in translation. So it's been translated by Eric Ozawa, and it's about someone who she finds out her boyfriend is actually about to get married to someone else, and she works at the same place as him, so she also can't work there anymore. And so she goes to stay with her uncle who runs a bookstore, and she helps him run the bookstore. And it's really about the story of what happens at the bookstore. And of course, she does find someone else. And also, she learns a lot more about her uncle and his wife and their relationship as well. So it's a really delightful read. It's just really fun about having a nice time. Some of it is about reading books, and some of it is about the life that you find through reading books and through talking to people about books. So it's very nice. So we've been talking to Nicole Ettenhofer, the VP of Growth and Strategy for George Street Photo and Video. And thank you very much for joining us today, Nicole. You can learn more about Nicole and George Street at georgestreetphoto.com, and I'll put that in the show notes. And that's, if you're typing it out from here, it's George Street. Street is spelled out as a word, georgestreetphoto.com. So thank you very much, Nicole, for joining us today. It's been really fun to chat with you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
So many useful tips for our listeners if they're planning a
So
wedding and want
useful.
to.
Yeah.
So useful, and also useful for the wedding, and also so great for just how we think about pets and how we want to interact. You know, getting those high value treats, thinking about the comfort of the pet. I think that's just so important. So thank you very much indeed. And thank you to everyone for listening or watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.